Now anybody that's going to get into this in any kind of a way, you want to market to Japan, you want to market to Loblaws, you want to market to Federated Co-op, they're going to require that you get into Canada Gap. Now, Canada Gap involves paperwork. Paperwork's something that, you know, I'd sooner gouge my eyes out than do, but
Thank you.
it's kind of essential that you do it. Canada Gap stands for Good Agricultural Practices. Basically, the food industry wants to place all the onus for any kind of problem that you're going to have in the food chain onto the backs of the farmers. So what you have to be able to do is I have to be able to track basically where every berry comes from in my field, when it was harvested, what variety it is, where it was processed in a CFIA facility, and so if somebody finds a frog in my box of berries or something, I can recall that row on that day. So I have to know where every plant basically came from. So it's a bit onerous. Kind of made sense to me after a while. There's a few things that are, you'll notice I had an 8-foot high elk fence around my orchard, and you go, boy, you must have a real problem with animals eating up your Haskap. Well, hey, in Saskatchewan, the deer don't eat Haskap. Too bitter, don't like it. The moose will walk right over it, and they'll chew on your poplars or your willows. I mean, the deer are basically a non-problem. I have heard some people have a problem with the mule deer. I started taking the Canada Gap course, and they said, you cannot have deer pooping in your orchard. And I thought, what? No ungulates will poop in your orchards. I'm thinking, what do you mean? Like every, I guess I went through this a little bit earlier in the morning. Every orchard since time immemorial has had sheep and goats in there, and that's what you do. It didn't make any sense to me at all. And then I did a bit of research. It was a few years back in Washington State. There was an apple orchard there, and they were organic, and no fence or anything around. And they decided to pick up the windfall apples. There was a feedlot about 4.5 miles away. Well, deer, they roam a lot. The deer had roamed through this feedlot. They picked up that E235 really toxic antibiotic-resistant bacteria. They carried it with them. It had gone into their feces. They pooped in this guy's orchard, and there was enough around there to contaminate the apples. They made a soft cider out of it. They killed 3 or 4 people, made hundreds of people sick. So I guess there is a reason for this kind of a thing. So basically, if you're going to get into this as a business and persuade your computer not to turn itself off, I'm not sure who runs it. It's run in Saskatchewan under the Saskatchewan Fruit Growers. It's done by in Guelph, Ontario. They have you have instructors. They come and you get certified in it, and then they send out an inspector, and they'll come out and they'll go through everything that you've done. Here we go. About the manuals, downloads. Now this is the kind of thing that can really scare you. Commodity specific. These will be the latest manuals. They get really annoyed at you because it's government stuff. So they change the manual every year. They change 2 or 3 pages, and you have to rewrite the whole manual every year because they really like you to write a lot of things down. It's paper. But, so, yeah, where are we at here? Nope. It's about the size of the Saskatoon telephone book anyway. I think Farm Credit, is the fellow still here from Farm Credit? No, he's gone, yeah. They sponsor a program called Farm Management Pro and Field Management Pro, and they work together, and it'll actually generate all your Canada Gap, and it'll also generate your organic. Now, organic status, the toughest thing about organic status, and anybody that's doing the auditing we're going to be certified organic in the middle of April. The toughest part of getting your organic is to do this kind of documentation. So it, as much as I hate it, it's just not the thing I like to do. We're the 21st century, and that's just the way it's going to be. If you want to have a couple acres, that's fine. Still a good idea to follow basic farm food safety. I mean, you don't want people coming scratching their butts and going and picking fruit in your U-pick orchard. It's just not a good thing to do. So, to get the basic idea, okay, you have to have a facility, hand washing facilities, and a toilet set up, and sign people in and sign people out, and that way you're protecting your butt. Somebody gets sick in your little orchard, it's good to follow those protocols, but you don't have to go to this extent. But if you are going to sell to Loblaws, you're going to sell to Federated Co-op, I'm marketing to Cisco, big food distributor, biggest one I think in North America. They won't accept anything from you unless you have the Canada Gap. Everything you take from there, it goes to a CFAA plant. The plant has a number on it. You have to get CFIA inspectors. Okay, I'm setting up a sorting line here, so you have a line where you've got it all set up, and you're picking it out. You get the inspector there, and then you put your gloves on, and you make sure you don't touch your face. And if you've got a beard, you put a hair net around your beard as well as one around your head. And you wear rubber boots, and you dip your feet into disinfectant, and you stop and you disinfect everything as you're going. Hate to scare everybody away, but if you're going to market on a big scale, this is what you got to do. Yeah. Annoyed me first. Then they told me I couldn't bring my dog into the orchard too. And he's my buddy and I like my dog. Who are you to tell me I can't have my dog in the orchard? But you just kind of got to follow the rules. Of course, I have a family of foxes living in my orchard. I love them there. They cut down on the. I've seen them take 3 or 4 ground squirrels and gophers and stuff, and apparently they can poop in my orchard, but my dog can't. Anyway, I guess enough of that. You have to find out. I don't really know the specifics in British Columbia for following the steps, but there will be somebody that's doing the certification for Canada Gap. But I expect vineyards.
Yeah, a lot of our cherry growers are Global Gap.
Yeah.
And even our mine in Utah, we're Global Gap certified, so that we can follow the protocol all the way through to the orchard.
To the orchard, yeah, and I mean, it's just the way you got to do business.
And because we've got our EU number, we had to be Global Gap certified to ship to France and all the way through. But for the grower, it's protection. It's total protection. You're crazy if you don't do it.
Yeah.
Our cherry guys are the same as you.
Mm-hmm.
We've got cherry growers with hand sanitizer stations in the orchard, and they had to. I mean, everywhere, everything's looked at. How you place your cans, how you recycle, what you don't recycle, where you change your oil. I mean, they just go through everything. But it makes you. I think it makes you a better.
Makes you better. I mean, okay, so you've got a beautiful Johanna 4. Well, you just don't go down to your corner co-op store and grab a can of grease and squirt it in there. No, you go someplace and you buy specific food grade grease. You mark where you bought it, you mark when you grease it, and you put in this nice, this is if a glob of grease falls onto your product. It might not be all that appealing, but at least it's not going to kill you. You put a hydraulic fluid in there. You'll notice that none of the moving parts inside the Johanna, they have their own hydraulic oil. The pumps and that are all run off your PTO, and that's a closed system, so you're not getting hydraulic fluid coming out of your tractor and running it through your harvesting equipment. And those are all just basic safety stuff. The other thing is, when you're doing fruit with those things, it's horrible smelling. If you don't go and clean your your machine every day, or with us, we clean it twice a day at least. Or if it gets, it gets really hot or it's been kind of wet, and your plant, your Haskap is pretty juicy anyway. As soon as it looks ugly or it starts to smell kind of funky, okay, back over we go. Then you got to use water that's you've tested the water. You've taken it to the research council, and they said, yeah, there's no coliforms, nobody's pooped in it. And hot water, you spray it down.
Even in our packing houses, they used to use shovels to move fruit along through the water lines and stuff, and they said you can't use shovels because it's a wood handle, metal. So that had to be a sealed plastic food grade shovel, which is incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
But then it had to be a specific color, and a specific color meant it was only used in the water, couldn't be used anywhere else.
Anywhere else, yeah.
So people couldn't borrow a shovel to go to another part of the packing house. Pest control was looked at, and your mice problems or lack of eradication. We couldn't have chemicals in the packing house. We had to move all the chemicals out of the packing house. It's real protection, but it's good protection.
So now, that's Canada GAP certified. Funnily enough, if you're making jam, you have to have Haskap too. Now, does anybody know what Haskap is? HAACP. Hazard assessment and something else protection. Basically, it was designed for the space station because they don't want people up in space with intestinal discomfort and weightlessness. I'll leave that to your imagination. Funnily enough, it's funny because jam is actually so full of sugar, it's pretty well preserved anyway. But for some odd reason, you need to have Haskap if you're making jam. If you put less sugar in it and call it topping, because you have to put a certain amount of sugar into a product to call it jam. If you call it topping, you don't need Haskap. You just need a CFIA-approved plant if you're going to sell it. So there are some odd things that don't make any sense at all, but that's kind of the way it goes. So that's kind of my preamble is okay, you're going to take that next step. You want to market. Well, you're best off starting to do this right from the scratch. So by the time you're actually in production, you have enough experience and know-how so you can go to the big guys and say, okay, Gordon's International, no, IEA, they're looking after a whole pile of high-end restaurants around here. Right now, you can go to those high-end restaurants with your truck as long as it's kind of, Canada GAP certified or whatever, and you can backdoor fruit. You can't do that in a supermarket or any of the chains anymore. You used to be able to. You can still do it on a limited extent, to individual chefs. They'll buy your product. I would recommend, if you've got 2 or 3 acres, go talk to the chefs and do that. Market it that way. That's a good way to market. When I'm going, what I'm doing, I'm always having to think, okay, president of Haskap Canada, I've got this huge orchard, it's just starting to come into production. I have to think ahead. So I don't just think, okay, I did great this year. I got 20,000 pounds of Haskap, which was, pretty good. But I'm just scratching the surface. So I've realized a couple things out of that. One is, logistically, I am not going to be able to, unless we figure out some really good handling system, I'm not going to produce individually quick frozen Haskap on a huge basis like most of my crop. I might be able to take 20% of that crop. The rest of the crop, I want to take that. I've been talking to Frank Dieter around here. He used to own Okanagan Spirits, and he has a mobile juice unit, very successful on the Dragon's Den, really good idea. Developed, so he's willing to actually come out to my orchard, drive his truck and his unit all the way out to Saskatchewan, and stay there until we've juiced all the product, or all the product that I want to juice, because that's the market I want to go for. Now, it's an economies of scale of whatever you're doing. I want to be able to handle stuff mechanically. Right now, we're taking 2-inch trays. You've seen there this morning, we had you know, a reefer, and we'd stick them all out on the floor, freeze it down, then we'd stick it into pails, all geared up and dressed up in Canada Gap stuff, keep track of wherever it came from, what the date was, what the variety was. Then we move those pails to a CFA facility. We run it through a sorting table after it's frozen, because Saskatchewan roads won't allow you to go. You guys are different. You're lucky here. You have you know, you have a fruit industry. You've always had a fruit industry. It's a lot easier to find a facility here that can deal with your product. Whereas in Saskatchewan, we're building the infrastructure right from the ground up. Then I want to take the powder left over. It's called pumice. I want to powder that up. You can either put it in capsules, according to James. Quercetin is a lot better, you know, bound up in a plant. You don't lose too much of it when you process like that, and it's a lot better for you. Anyway, kind of where I want to go with this is, I'll explain a little bit. I've been doing some dealings with the Asian markets, so I have I've been talking to the Japanese and the Koreans. And by the way, I gave him your phone number.
Oh, okay.
Because he asked for it. He came here on. Okay. He came.
Was that Bill Choi?
That was Bill Choi.
Okay, yeah.
He showed up on Boxing Day of all days. Bob's a nice family man. And I said, Bob, I got a guy coming all the way from Korea and he wants to talk to you. What?
Boxing Day.
On Boxing Day. So Bob graciously opened up his greenhouse and we went all in there and we went through. He'd actually done a fair bit of research. Now he's the president of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Seoul, and he was also the guy that was responsible for bringing blueberries into the Korean market. Now, a lot of people don't know the Korean market was a driving force for the antioxidant, because it was like the way Bill Choi said, in Korea, we're aging population. We all want to live forever. They will love this stuff. You eat it, you feel good, you look good, and you live forever. Huh? And then also, he really liked my daughter. Who's 40 she's 40 years old, but she's a fitness instructor. He says, so now you know, he wants her to go over there and become the poster girl for Haskap in South Korea. So that's one. And then we managed to ship some product. I've also been working with a Japanese company, a couple. I shipped to Hokkaido, and of course they didn't want me to say anything because they took the Haskap that I made and then they snuck it into their Haskap and used it to expand their jams and all the other things that they were doing. But it was quite a procedure to get there because the broker was an American company, so I had to ship across two international borders, and the paperwork just about drove me crazy. I think I got the pieces of paper I needed 5 minutes before it had to go from here to there to there. So, and I'm also dealing with a large company in the States, out of California, that wants juice, and they want to do the antioxidant tea. So, we're also working with. Haskap Canada is a Canadian national organization. A lot of the government money, the ADOPT programs are all provincially specific. So Haskap Canada is facilitating, we're working with the fruit growers, we're getting involved with the STEP program, we have the Western Canadian Trade Commissioner involved and various other levels of government because it's really important, very important, like saving face and being polite, and all this is very important in the Asian market. So it's a lot of stuff I couldn't do a presentation because a lot of it's all proprietary stuff, and I've had to sign non-disclosure things. But so I thought I'd just blather here and and then let you guys ask. Is that what we're gonna do? Have a question and answer after?
Well, we'll talk about High Mountain Farm.
Okay.
A couple of people are interested in that, and then we'll do a Q&A.